How did you get into motorsports? Was it through a person? Was it through an event? Did you happen to catch it on television one time? Did you happen to live by a track? What was the catalyst for you that made you enjoy watching motorised vehicles go round in sometimes literal circles? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. For me though, it was my dad. And he would watch probably any motorised sport that was on television, but he really liked the Isle of Man TT, he loved British touring cars, and of course, he loved Formula 1. That love for motorsports grew through watching the races. It was all on free-to-air television back then, so BBC and then later ITV, through video games, which we've looked at a fair bit on this channel, and toys. Now, fortunately, I still have I'd say the majority of my childhood toys, especially the ones relating to Formula 1, so I thought I'd share them with you today. I do want to put a little quick disclaimer on the video though. If you're a collector of, say, like scale models, particularly Minichamps and Onyx, this might be slightly triggering for you. You might not want to watch this one. You have been officially warned. If you decide to enter from here, it's not on me. Let's play. Here we go. This is my F1 toy box. It's not my actual childhood toy box. I just recently collected all of my childhood F1 toys from my parents' house and put them in this box to show to you. And we're going to start with the potential triggering items. So for those of you who don't know, Onyx or Minichamps do models of F1 cars. I don't know if they still do them actually, but typically they're 1/43 scale. They came in this nice presentation boxes, and I'm pretty sure they did the majority of the grid. I'm not sure if they did every single car, but they were collector's items and you could buy them and preserve them. They're not really toys. I don't know if I'm alone in saying this, and if there's anyone else out there who used them as toys, but I certainly did. Which is why the condition of these is going to affect some collectors, because they're going to look at these and go, "What have you done, you idiot?" They've taken some damage. Let's start with this one. So this, that's a good start. Excuse me. Oh, that wing's definitely not in the right place for. Now I'm going to do cutaways of everything because I'm not like a beauty influencer where I do put that in front of it. Autofocus is shit. So I'll cut away so you can see these a bit closer. We're going to start with this. This is the Tyrrell 022. This is Ukyo Katayama's car from 1994. He came 5th twice in this car, Brazil and San Marino, and 6th once at Great Britain. He also retired 12 times in this car. It was not the most reliable car. This is actually in not too bad of a condition, actually. It's actually going to get probably worse from here. We've probably started with quite a good one. The wing, as I say, is definitely in the wrong position. That's way too high. I'm not sure what it's supposed to attach to, but obviously at some point it has come off. But this is the thing, I know they're models, but this is the thing I enjoyed about them when I was younger, is the fact that they're really satisfying to roll around. So this is an Onyx model, first I should mention. So we're going to do the Onyx ones first. So Onyx have this particular style. The next one we're going to look at is also from 1994. This is a Sauber. This is the C13. This is Carl Wendlinger in the car. You can see from the helmet detail. Carl only drove 3 races for Sauber that year. He scored points twice in those 3 races, so he was having a pretty solid start to the season, but unfortunately he had a horrible crash at Monaco in free practice and was in a coma for weeks before eventually recovering to drive for Sauber at the start of 1995. Again, this one isn't too bad. You can see there's some issues with the front suspension. It does not really connect properly, but it's still got a decent ride on it. I've got to say though, I absolutely love this era Formula 1 car. Before they got too aero heavy, they just found a real nice cross section in this era of form versus functionality. There's beauty in the simplicity of these cars. The next one, we move on to 1995. This is Bertrand Gachot's Pacific, the PR02 from the 1995 season. This seat was shared with Giovanni Lavaggi and Jean-Denis Delatraz. This model is specifically based on the Canadian Grand Prix. So I've actually found a clip from someone who has the Canadian Grand Prix, so you can actually see the model versus the real car it's based on. There are some issues with suspension and ride height, and this is not going to be the first one, so as we move it, he's got a constant front right lockup. You also may notice that he's got no wing mirrors. All of those cars should have wing mirrors, but obviously I'm playing with them. I've knocked them off, obviously. If it helps, as an adult, I am now slightly annoyed at myself that I didn't look after these, but at the same time, I didn't want to deprive myself of the fun. And me playing with these cars continue to stoke my imagination and my love for Formula 1. The final Onyx model I have is from 1996, and there's a little extra detail on this because, of course, aero is getting more advanced. This is Jacques Villeneuve's rookie season car, the Williams, the FW18. And again, this is in quite good condition. The wheels all seem to work. The suspension is all in pretty good nick. There are some paint cracks. So I have another 1/43rd scale model here, this is clearly more of a toy and what I should have been playing with. This is made by Corgi, and as you can see, there's slightly less detail on this car, and it's a bit more robust, and there's stuff here that hasn't broken off because there wasn't fiddly little bits to break off. So the model of this car isn't listed on the bottom. Usually they are listed on the bottom. This just says F1 Benetton. And some listings note this online as the B191, which was the Benetton from 1991 and the first 3 rounds of 1992. Now, comparing the liveries, this is definitely the livery from 1992. So either it's the 191 used at the start of that season, which was driven by Michael Schumacher, or it's just the 192. Either way, this is a Michael Schumacher Benetton. I always was aware of this was a Schumacher Benetton, and I always treated it as such. What I mean by treated it as such is, obviously I would know these drivers and have different opinions on these drivers as a young boy, because even though I don't remember watching Adelaide 94, I was aware of it, and I very much thought he was the bad guy in that scenario, so he was like the pantomime villain for me for many years. We're now going to move on to the Minichamps models, which are probably the most famous, like, 1/43rd scale models. They're not toys, but they were treated as such. I don't think it was ever a discussion. I think it was just like, it was bought for me as a toy, I used it as a toy. Sometimes flatten out bits of cardboard and draw out tracks on them. So I had one drawn out of Donington Park, the National Circuit version, not the one with the hairpin, because the cardboard box wasn't quite big enough to fit the hairpin. Now, interestingly, in coming to research what these cars were, or just double check the details on them, what I have here are a couple of cars that are kind of like Frankenstein cars. And that's not because of the condition that they're in. So let's start with this one. This is, obviously, David Coulthard behind the wheel of a Williams. Now, if you look from the shape of this, some, I was going to say nerds. I mean that in an affectionate way. I think it's a good thing. If you are a nerd, you might have realised that this is the shape of the FW16, which is the car from 1994. However, if that were true, David Coulthard would have the number 2 on the car. This is in fact the 1995 presentation model, which is what's written on the packaging of this. So this is essentially the chassis of the 1994 car with the livery of the 1995 car. It's almost like they've decided we're going to rush this out at the beginning of the year. We're not going to wait to see what the 95 car looks like. It's just, right, 94 car with 95 livery. This isn't in too bad a shape. Again, wing mirrors are missing. Suspension is pretty good. Rear wings in a good spot. There's some issues with paintwork, admittedly. This is in a similar situation. So this is Johnny Herbert's B194. Now, obviously, The B194 was mostly driven by Jos Verstappen. Herbert only stepped in at the end of the season. And that said, if he had stepped in, he wouldn't have been on number 2. So again, this is the 1994 chassis with a 1995 livery. On the box, this kind of writes it a bit clearer. It's called Show Car B194/B195, where they've just kind of done a weird mashup. The front suspension is wrecked. Very heavy toe-in on the tyres at the front. Some of the suspension rods are missing. It's also the ride height is a little bit wonky. We're missing a bit of aero on the left-hand side of the car. The rear wing's a bit wonky. So as you can see, it's taken a bit of a beating, which is a real shame. I would love to have this as a perfect model, but I also don't want to take away all the times I had playing with this thing. And it was interesting when I discovered that obviously the Coulthard and Herbert models are kind of like weird Frankenstein-y crossovers. I thought, oh well, that makes them rare. No, it's just something they obviously did as an oddity, but they made loads of them. They don't seem uncommon at all. The final Minichamps model, so collectors can come out very shortly, it's almost over, is another David Coulthard. This is not a crossover weird model, this is pretty straightforward. It's the McLaren MP4 13 from 1998. Now in terms of paint, this is very much in the best condition of all the Minichamps models, but there's some, again, clear issues with suspension and ride height. At least all the suspension rods are there. The mirrors are there though, incredibly. The aerial's there. You can see the aerodynamic fin above the airbox is still there, but only just. Collectors, you can come out now. It's safe. No more models used as toys. In fact, let's have a little bit of a clean break. And in fact, I'm going to show you something that isn't actually a toy, but something I've had since I was a child. It is a clock in the shape of James Hunt's helmet. I absolutely love this. This is so cool. I thought it was cool as a child, because obviously it's a cool design, it's a racing helmet, you think, oh, it's awesome, and it's like it's a clock as well, the visor comes up and down. But the fact that it's James Hunt's helmet, and it's in really good condition, to be honest. I mean, it's long since stopped working. I have no idea how you get it to start working again, because there's no buttons on it, and I'm kind of slightly scared to I imagine that this bottom bit rotates off. Oh, well, actually, oh, I'm scared. Oh, don't break it in front of me. Ah! And there we go. Ah, okay. Also, I'm sure this was an alarm clock. I have no idea how you make it alarm and what it alarms as. But, you know, there we go. I'm going to put the helmet back on. Thing is, as well, it's a her. A her? A her. As in tag her. I can say tag her, but saying her by itself seems weird. But obviously Tag acquired her to become Tag Her in 1985. But it's, you know, Swiss made, her, good brand. I'm pretty sure this was from my uncle Mick as well, my dad's brother, who's also into motorsports. Together, my dad and my uncle went to the British Grand Prix. I believe it was the 96 British Grand Prix as well. And I'm honestly fine about it, that they didn't take me. I'm really okay with it. So, speaking of the British Grand Prix, 1996, and helmets, I also have a collectible that is actually quite well looked after. This is Damon Hill's 1996 helmet, based on the design used by his father Graham, which was inspired by the insignia of the London Rowing Club where Damon's father met his future mother. This is obviously very well looked after as well, because I couldn't use it as a toy, so I looked after it properly, you see. Now you could argue that so far I've not actually shown you any actual toys. Let's get into that now. Who remembers Matchbox? Matchbox did, and still do actually, die-cast model cars. I believe Matchbox are owned by Mattel, and in the 90s they did F1 replicas. They didn't do the full grid, but certain cars from certain teams. It's a bit of a random selection, as you're about to see, but they also gave a lot of focus to Williams, and particularly Nigel Mansell. Let's start with this. This is the footwork FA14, the number 9 car driven by Derek Warwick. This is from 1993. It was used from round 3 onwards, so that was the European Grand Prix at Donington Park. And Warwick managed 2 points finishes in this car, whereas teammate Aguri Suzuki didn't. Some listings have this online as the FA13 from 1992, driven by Michele Alboreto, but I think due to the wing shape and the livery, this is the 1993 car. So this is all pretty much in one piece. It still drives, it still rolls as it should. Obviously some chipping to the paintwork. It was obviously played with quite extensively. Up next we have our second Sauber of the video. This is the Sauber C12, driven by JJ Leto in 1993. The Liqui Moly sponsorship on the car confirms this is the 93 car, as the C13 that we saw earlier, that had a slightly more covered car in terms of sponsorship. Leto also managed 2 points finishes in 1993 with this car. This was Sauber's first in F1. In fact, Leto scored 2 points on their debut in South Africa. The next one I am particularly excited about, because before coming to do this video I did not realise whose car this was. May I present to you the F39A from 1993. It's a Ferrari. It wasn't the best Ferrari, but it is the number 27. And who drove the number 27 Ferrari in 1993? It's John Alesi. I did not realise all these years I had a John Alesi car. I quite like this 93 livery. It wasn't a great car, although Alesi did okay with it. He managed 4 points finishes, including 2 podiums, the best place being second at Monza. It was described as difficult and uncompetitive. This year Ferrari fought with Ligier for 4th place in the Constructors, which they did only just. But it does make me very happy, and it is a remarkable bit of foreshadowing that we have an Alesi car in my childhood toy roster. Now, if you like Williams, you're going to enjoy pretty much the rest of this video quite a bit. As I mentioned, Matchbox really did lean into Williams and Nigel Mansell's success. So, of course, we have this, the FW14B from 1992, Red 5. His dominant title-winning car where he won 9 out of the 16 races. He won the first 5 races of the season, which at the time he was the first person to do that. And with the exception of 4 retirements, he finished no lower than 2nd in this car. The active suspension wonder. Now I also have an FW15C. This is Damon Hill's car from 1993, Hill's first full season, where he finished 3rd in the championship behind Prost and Senna and just ahead of Michael Schumacher. However, the cars were not the only thing you could get. You could buy all of the cars I've shown you, as far as I'm aware, with a Kenworth transporter for the car, and I have one for Hill's 93 Williams. So obviously the car would, I think, sit on it this way, and then you could transport the car to the track. However, as I mentioned, they went even further with Williams than just the transporter. So there was a Williams set you could get, which included a small Williams team van, a larger Williams team lorry, and the back of the lorry opens. There's not really much you can fit in the back of the lorry, but the fact that the back of the lorry opens was cool to me and remains cool to me for reasons. And then you could detach the trailer from the lorry as well. And also part of this set, you had essentially a couple of broadcast towers and cameras. So I'm going to set these up. Ooh, no, these always fell apart, because it is just essentially a flat bit of plastic. And then you slide through a plank and then whack on a TV camera. Slightly curious that on the side of these broadcast towers is Sky Television, which, you know, at this point in history, F1 was firmly free to air. It was on the BBC, Probably because the BBC couldn't take any money to be on these towers, so Sky were like, oh yeah, we'll do that, even though we don't actually broadcast Formula 1. Now, as I mentioned, Matchbox also gave a lot of focus to Mansell even after leaving F1. So I present to you, similarly, his 1993 Newman Haas Lola with another car transporter and a similar team lorry as well. I always loved the shape of the 93 Indy cars, and this particular model of Mansell's Newman Haas car just looks really mean and really cool. I just love the shape of it so much, it's awesome. So I've got another couple of pieces of memorabilia that I was given when I was younger, which I definitely did not appreciate as much when I was younger. Now, I think are really cool. Well, this is kind of cool. It's not really cool. It's earplugs, but as you may be able to work out, it is earplugs branded by World Championship Team Marlboro. Because of course, tobacco was quite a big thing in Formula 1 for quite a bit. The next one though is, I knew what I would have thought was cool growing up, but now I think is immensely cool. It is team stickers for Williams from 1994, Hill and Senna. I love these. I think these are really cool, and I'm not going to ever use them. I just want to keep them in this little plastic wallet thing, and I'm going to stand them up somewhere. I feel like I'm not explaining myself very well, but there's something about these that I find really, really special that I'm going to hold on to. Yeah. The final collection of toys I'm going to show you are from Bburago. That's spelled with 2 B's, just to be absolutely sure. They made 1/24th scale cars, and they still make scale models of F1 cars today. Again, like I said, if you're a Williams fan, you're going to be well catered for, because of course we have the FW14B from 1992, Mansell's Red 5. These are very much as they're scale models of cars, these are much more made in the realm of being toys to be played with, because they are plastic. The front wheels turn, so you can see the little suspension move, which is really cool. Now, I've got 2 more of these to show you, but this is by far the most straightforward one, because these final 2 are kind of Frankenstein cars. I'm going to show you this. It's another Mansell Williams, and from first glance you might look at this and go, well, obviously that's going to be, you know, one of Mansell's Williams from the mid-80s, 85 or 86, 1986 being the season of the infamous colossally That's Mansell. And sure, from a livery perspective, that's probably right. You know, got the ICI sponsorship, got Canon. Then you look at the shape of the car for 1986, which would be the FW11, and it doesn't quite look like the FW11. It's really actually doesn't look like the FW11 at all, except for the livery. So then you go back a year to the FW10 from 1985, which had, again, a similar livery. But again, the shape still isn't quite right, and it doesn't quite look the same. So you look on the bottom, it usually says, and this says, on the bottom of it, FW8. And when you Google the FW8, you can see that this is obviously not the FW8. So I had a look online to find the packaging, and on the packaging for the car, it says FW8C, which looks like this. And now you can see what they've done. This is indeed the chassis of the FW8, but similar to the Minichamps cars we looked at earlier, they've obviously just stuck on the livery from either the FW10 or FW11. I'm guessing this is going to be the FW11 livery, and they only did it again with this Benetton. So this on the bottom says Benetton Ford B188, which is the Benetton from 1988. And when you look at the shape of it, the body, yes, this is definitely the B188, but the livery doesn't match, the sponsors don't match. It's actually a Benetton B190 livery. This car's livery, which is an odd thing to say, the car's livery was driven by Nelson Piquet in 1990, whereas the chassis was driven by Thierry Boutsen, Johnny Herbert and Emmanuel Pirot. So obviously they've again just thought, oh well, world champion Nelson Piquet's driving this Benetton, Do we have any Benettons? Yeah, we've got the body for the B188. We'll stick that on. If there are any toy historians who stumble across this video and you happen to know why there's so many sort of Frankenstein-y cars with chassis from one year and liveries from another, I'd love to know why. I've had a little look about and I've not been able to find very much. There is an excellent article that I did find though about the history of Matchbox cars and their relationship with Formula 1. I've put a link to that in the description. It's a really interesting read about, you know, what cars they made from the 70s to the 90s. And this is or a big part of, I should say, my childhood. And to be honest, I've really enjoyed just going back through and showing it you for some strange reason. All I can say is I hope you've enjoyed me showing you all this stuff. It's brought me a lot of joy. Again, how did you get into F1? Did you have any childhood F1 or even motorsport toys in general? I'm sure somewhere I've got some random touring car and DTM toys as well, which I could have brought, but I just haven't found them. But any motorsports toys outside of like video games that you really enjoyed playing with, do you have any of these? Did you play with any of them? Have you looked after them better than me? Are you a collector and are you angry with me? Maybe don't put that in the comments, I can probably tell you are. But thank you for watching, and we'll be jumping back into the digital world very, very soon.